538, Calexico City Council, Calexico Redevelopment Success Agency, Calexico Financing Authority special meeting called at Fernando Nene Torres Council Chambers, Tuesday, June 28, 2016. Roll call. Yes?
Here.
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 Thank you, Ms. Garcia. The public comments, do we have someone? I don't think so. Okay. Public comment not to exceed the 3 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the City Council on closed session items only. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name and the place of residency for the record. While members of the public are encouraged to participate, it is unlawful to disturb or delay the council meeting with personal or slanderous remarks. The City Council is prohibited by the state law from taking action or discussing from not included on the printed agenda. Please direct your questions and the comments to the City Council. I believe we don't have public comments, so we're going to go to adjourn to the closed session. A closed session of the City Council, Calexico Community Redevelopment Agency, Success Agency, Calexico Financing Authority may be held on accordance with the state law, which may include it, but is not limited to the following types of items: personal matters, labor negotiation, security matters, providing instructions to real property negotiations, and the conference with legal counsel regarding pending litigation. The closed session will be held in the City Hall conference room located at 608 Hiva Avenue, Calexico, California. Any public comment on closed session item will be taken before the closed session. Any required announcements or discussion of closed session items or actions following the closed session will be made in the City Council Chambers, 608 Hiva Avenue, Calexico, California. Closed session 1, conference with the labor negotiators, agency representative, city manager, city attorney, employees organization, public, police officer association, firefighter association, supervisor association, certified operator association, SEIU, local 221, Calexico Municipal Employees Association, Government Code, section 54957.6. 2, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code, section 54956.9 D1. A, Stephen Frazier versus City of Calexico. B, Stephen Garcia versus City of Calexico. C, Herman Run versus City of Calexico. D, Frank Uriarte versus City of Calexico. E, Luis Casillas versus City of Calexico. F, Rudy Alacon versus City of Calexico. G, Gabriel Rodriguez versus City of Calexico. Calexico, time is 5:43. Urgent closed session. Close the closed session. Please turn off the cell phones, and we're gonna get started. The meeting, please be seated. 657, Calexico City Council, Calexico Redevelopment Successor Agency, Calexico Financing Authority, special meeting. Come from the, what's called, from the closed session. Closed session report from the,
No reportable actions were taken.
okay, so we do attendance again.
Mayor Kim,
Aye.
Mayor Castro,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Hurtado,
Here.
Councilmember Moreno,
Here.
we're all present.
Okay, please have the allegiance. Would you, Jason Jung, to do it for us? Thank you. So we had a report from the city attorney, so we're gonna have approval agenda.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Moreno, second by Mr. Real. If we have any discussion,
Yes, I just have a question, Mr. Mayor.
yes.
Are we calling these meetings workshops, or are they just discussions? Does it even make a difference?
Just discussions, the workshops.
Will we have something later called a workshop by any chance for the public? Oh, I'll ask that later, sorry.
They should. Okay, so we're gonna call vote. Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Okay, we have a public comments before we go to the,
That's this one.
Ms. Padilla. Just we have only one item.
Hello, Mr. Villa.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to Calexico. These are your monkeys. They're all yours. Okay? Yep. This is your circus. This is your monkey. So, did we pass the budget with a 30% cut to the employees? Do we know? Can you tell us
We
what
just
happened?
started.
Are you guys going to cut the employees 30%?
We just started, though.
Are we not talking about the budget? Am I in the wrong meeting? We're talking about the budget, right? Are you guys cutting the employees 30%?
There has been no final decision on the budget.
Okay. So,
That decision will be made in open session. This is a preliminary discussion. The final decisions will be made on Thursday at a special meeting when there'll be an approval of the budget and approval of financing documents. So that's when the final decisions are being made.
okay, thank you for clarifying that for all of us. So again, I will tell you what I told you in the last meeting. They take 30%, you take 30%, and you all give up your paychecks. Because if they're gonna be hurting, and if the city's gonna be hurting, all you council people need to give up your pay. You can keep your insurance. But everybody gets cut along the same way. Everybody 30%, and you guys give up your pay. That means Mr. Kim, Mr. Castro, Mr. Real, Mr. Moreno, and Mrs. Hurtado. So, because that's the fair thing to do. And if you're gonna get here, and you need to lead by example, all of you. And if you need to cut services, then you do that. You cut your recreation or whatever it is you need to do to balance this budget. But it should be all fair to everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Padilla. Next person is Mr. Yanes.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members, citizens of Calexico. A little more than a year, we had a special meeting not far from here to keep on his position Mr. Ward, our former city manager. Many fellow members of the community expressed their concerns and want to keep him as a city manager. We know now that Mr. Ward overspent many millions in our savings and funds. I just want to ask, where are those fellow citizens? I need them now to guide us and find the best solution to solve our financial problems. What we have done, Council? What have you done, Council? Fight between each other. You must listen to your advisors, to the community, read, research, do your homework. Remember, I just found this on the webpage of the city. The City Council is responsible for the strategic planning, oversee the city manager. It must provide direction to the city manager, adopts the annual city budget, and establish goals, objectives, and performance measures for the city manager. The goal of the City Council is to provide a unified, well-informed, and effective council working and governing to produce the best city government, management, quality of life, and service to the residents of Calexico. Blah, 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 blah. I can continue. Let me ask you, had you accomplished your goals? Had you? I'm sure that you had planned on doing it, but unfortunately, you had not. Now is the time to go back on track. Mr. Villa, you are not alone. You are surrounded by many competent people that want to help you. We love our city. We want to help you. Everyone wants to help you. You have a very important and difficult task. How can you balance the budget and keep employees happy? How can? You must listen and follow council directions. In the meantime, you must be careful, apply governance skills without incurring on favoritism. Do the best for our city. I am sure that our employees had not had any responsibility on this financial crisis situation. I am sure that they had put all their efforts to keep our service running. But ultimately, they are the ones that will suffer any consequences on bad or wrong previous administration decisions. Previous administrations, previous bad politicians brought us into this situation. I just do not want to name them. Now is the time. You council members, you Mr. Villa, you are the ones that must solve this mess. This time, do it right.
Thank you, Mr. Yanes. And Mr. Gonzalez, Javier Gonzalez. If someone wishes to talk, we have a slip there, so please fill it up to speak.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, members of the public, staff. I'm going to wear two hats today. President of the Calexico Finance Commission, and I'm the President of Kennedy Gardens Neighborhood Watch, the only official neighborhood watch in Imperial County for over 20 years. I want to echo what Mr. Yanez said. You're not alone, Mr. Villa. We're here. I already have a group of seniors. Kennedy Gardens is full of seniors. We want to help. We can cut the grass. We can coordinate our things. You're not alone. We want to help. We want to irrigate. We want to help you. You're not alone. But you guys have a difficult task. And I'm not going to give advice, but it's difficult. Right now, I just heard Mrs. Maribel Padilla, which I also agree, everyone together. But we have employees that are almost paid minimum. They've been kept there because they're not liked. If you lower the 30%, they're going to be below minimum, or at least they'll be better to go work at Jack in the Box. You have the enterprise zone. They have a lot of money. They have like $30 million. I don't know why the reservoirs are all dirty. They have money, but why are they being affected? So it's a difficult situation. And of course, if you lower some and not the others, the lawsuits come, but it's a decision you have to make. I mean, I also agree 30% is across the board, but this is not affecting the enterprise. And there's people I know people that are getting like 12, 13 an hour. If you lower 30%, I think they're going below the minimum wage. So that's a decision you're going to have to take. But one thing I'm going to tell you, it's affecting the quality of life. I used to go out with Daniel Gutierrez, and you're not alone. Now that I speak to Daniel Gutierrez, by myself and Daniel Gutierrez, voluntarily, we used to have the state prison, the youth authority, the inmates of the county, in the juvenile hall. They used to come. We used to bring them on the weekends. So there's help. There's a lot of options. You can also work with the Adopt a Park. You gotta help those people. They're there to be. We haven't helped them. In the past 15 years, we started that program in 2003. Not one group has been thanked. So you're losing a lot of volunteers there. But I just want to tell you, it's affecting the quality of life. I just talked to the chief installing dummy cameras at our park. If we're not gonna get protection, I used to go out and walk at night and talk to the youth. I don't do that anymore. It's dangerous. I don't feel like if I need backup, it's going to be there. Graffiti, our park has been graffitied 6 times in 2 weeks. It wasn't there before, so it's affecting the quality of life. I know it's a tough decision. Some of my friends are mad at me, but we're here not for the friends, we're here for the community, and you guys have to cut somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. So it looks like no more people wish to talk. So we're gonna go to discussion, or before the discussion, I believe we're gonna need a presentation from our financial staff. Ms. Mayor is gonna do it, or?
So, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we have, if you recall, the last time we met, we presented to you a budget overview for the general fund only. And we indicated to you that we would come back to you today to present to you the rest of the funds. So Ms. Susan Myers is prepared to give you sort of an overview of the rest of the budget accounts, and it is our hope that we can gather input from you, input from the community, and hopefully we can come back to you Thursday with a final budget proposal. So at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Meyer to give you a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Susan Mayer. I'm a financial consultant who's been assisting the city's finance department during the past year. I'm here tonight to introduce to you the proposed budget for all the city funds for the 16-17 fiscal year. We will also include the information for 15-16 as well. It looks like our PowerPoint computer is rebooting, so we'll proceed without our PowerPoint presentation.
Testing.
This afternoon, the proposed budget was published on the city's website. We do have copies in the back for the public, and the city council just received this afternoon the citywide budget for all the city funds. There's frequently been a question about what are the available funds for the whole city. And what I'd like to tell you is that this budget book presents information for every fund of the city. I handed this book to one of the members of the finance department, and they flipped through it and decided that it was pretty boring. And I just wanted to let you know, there's 115 pages of Excel spreadsheets here. This is an accountant's version of a budget. It doesn't include program. It doesn't include a lot of information about your program. It doesn't include descriptions. It doesn't include photographs. It doesn't sell the programs. What we have for you instead today is an accountant's version of a budget that focuses on transparency, about regaining trust in the numbers, And one other thing we've done here is for every single fund of the city, we've listed the June 2015 audited balance sheet, the available working capital, so that you can trace where we have the last audited numbers. And I have to say, the audit has not been published for 2015, but the auditors have concluded their field work. And so these are the best available information for the June 30, 2015. And the reason I mention that is we wanted to, there's just been a lack of trust about the city's finance numbers over the past year. And so the budget we have before you attempts to build that trust and to build that transparency by starting and presenting for every fund in the city the audited working capital for every fund. I have a few PowerPoint slides, but it looks like we're still waiting on our computer. So I'm going to tell you that the citywide budget includes $60 million of expenditures for the 16-17 fiscal year. And as we look through the fund structure of the city, and especially for those who are less familiar with government accounting practices, we really take the cities, and the city has 50, 60 different funds. We really look at the world in two parts. We have unrestricted money and we have restricted money. The workshop that we had for you last week on the general fund and the Measure H represents the unrestricted funds of the city. What we have today, and the focus of our discussion tonight, is really on the other programs who are operating outside the general fund, and these are the restricted programs of the city. Primarily your water and your wastewater enterprises, your capital improvement program, and your operating grants that make up the rest of the $60 million of citywide budget. I'd like to focus on the water and wastewater, and because this is a difficult year for the general fund, most of our budget discussion has focused on the general fund and attempts to balance our expenditures and our revenues. But I don't want to let the significance of your other programs go without mention. Your water and your wastewater funds have accumulated significant resources, and this represents sound financial planning to raise and assess fees that cover both the cost of the operations and the capital and the debt service on your operations. Collectively, these operations had about $25 million in resources at the end of the June 2015 fiscal year. And the proposed expenditures for the year are exceeding the revenues because of the sound investment in capital improvement program. Both the water and the wastewater funds are investing significantly in capital in the upcoming year. And so as a result, there is a plan to draw down some of those fund balances. Each of those programs has accumulated development impact fees, and a substantial portion of the capital program is being funded by those development impact fees. And so in this case, we have expenditures greater than revenues, but for a good reason, because this means that the city is reinvesting in its critical infrastructure for these essential utility services. Again, the focus of our discussion tonight is operations outside the general fund. So I did want to mention that there are significant operations in employees, operating costs, capital program, and debt service in those utility operations. I'm at a bit of a loss to continue without the PowerPoint slides.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps we can take a 5-minute break, because I really like the public to look at these slides, and we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty, and if we can take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we
should
go
do it.
5 minutes recess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Put the heater on.
Eduardo, if you could advance to slide 2, please. Okay, we're gonna regroup here on our proposed budget
We're
discussion.
going to come back from from the 7:11. Go ahead.
Yes. Our objectives, I'm regrouping here now that we have our PowerPoint in place here. Our objectives tonight, as I have been saying, is to focus on the funds outside the general fund. After a few brief comments on the citywide budget, we're going to come back to the general fund strategy and reprise and just give a refresher of some of the key points we made last week about the general fund and the decisions in front of the city council as how to rebalance the general fund. After receiving feedback, then we'll move on to talk, and we'll finish with the next steps and the actions for the June 30 special meeting on Thursday. And I want to briefly discuss the proposed budget resolution and some features of that resolution that we are proposing. And so, moving ahead, Eduardo, to the next slide. As we look at the citywide budget, we have a $60 million budget, and this includes $17 million of unrestricted monies, substantial investments in the water and wastewater programs, and $26 million in other funds. Now, I mentioned to you that we have a proposed budget document for you, and we have a table of contents and tabs to help you hopefully efficiently navigate through that book. And one of the key documents that we have is a list of the citywide budget by fund. So in your proposed budget book on page 11, you can see the detail behind the full $60 million of expenditure proposals by fund and program. And we have the general fund, we have operating grants, we have debt service funds, capital project funds, enterprise funds for the water, wastewater, airport, and transit. And then finally, we have special districts and the housing funds. And so we hope to convey to you transparency on the citywide operations, not just the general fund. And I think the reason that this is so important is because of the pressure on the general fund. We want to be sure that there is a good look at every other program and cash balance in the city to be sure that there are any discretionary monies or opportunities to leverage and reimburse the general fund for services. We have identified and captured that. And so again, I just refer you to page 11 in the citywide budget to highlight all of the operating funds of the city, not just the general fund, which receives most of the budget attention. I had briefly made some introductory comments about the water and wastewater program. And the reason I wanted to mention this is, first of all, I wanted to highlight the accumulation of working capital in these programs at June 2015. And throughout the budget book, you'll see references to the June 2015 information, which is the year that has been most recently audited. I'd just like to focus that we have customer revenues of 11 million, almost 12 million, that are covering and exceeding our operating costs and also contributing to the capital and the debt programs of these funds. And as you can see in these utility operations, we are proposing 16 million of expenditures, which are significantly greater than the revenues from the current year. But the reason we're doing that is because we're drawing down development impact fees and other monies that have been accumulated for the capital program and reinvesting this money into capital projects to sustain the infrastructure of the utility operations. So in this case, we don't have a balanced budget for the year, but we're drawing down beginning fund balances for a reason, again, to protect the infrastructure in those utilities. The next slide, I'd just like to slice the $60 million citywide budget from a different angle. I'd like to show you the categories of how we're spending that money. The prior slide showed you the fund, which basically shows you whether it was just restricted or unrestricted money. Here I'm showing you how we're spending the money. And of the 60 million, the salaries and benefits for existing city employees reach almost, it's 17 million, almost 18 million. With the proposed general fund reductions.
I'm sorry, is that fiscal year 15-16?
And that's a very good question. Thank you for the question. This is, just to clarify, this is 16-17. All the slides that we have in this package are 16-17, the upcoming fiscal year. And so with the proposed reductions in the general fund, and these are subject to council policy, we would be bringing the salary and benefits down to a $14 million level. And that pays for 146 positions. The other components of the budget are the operating budget of 13 million. And I'm often asked, what's in that number? You know, what can we do to control that number? And did you know the largest piece of that operating budget is your contract with the solid waste provider? You contract out for garbage collection services. The largest piece of that budget is the money that you pass through. You collect from your customers, but then pass through to the contractor. Another large piece of that is for the general liability insurance citywide. And then we move on to materials, supplies, services, contracts, electric bills, and the other things that it takes to run the city. A large number this year is the capital program for 28 million, and I have a list of the large projects that we'll come to on a later slide. But this is more than in the past, And I briefly mentioned some of the investment in the utilities, but there's an investment in transportation and other programs as well that is raising the total level of your city budget this year because of that capital program. And then finally, we have $4 million of debt. And what is that debt paying for? The water bonds, there's a little bit of a loan left in the wastewater fund, the Measure H, the Measure D, and then there's the general fund debt of $1 million in the current year as well to repay the interfund loan. So that is how we get to 60 million citywide. Because of its significance, I wanted to reprise, and this is the slide that I had showed you last week as well, just as a reminder of the $17 million that we have projected for employee salaries and benefits. We are a service organization. One of our most primary costs, especially in our discretionary funds, is the cost of our employees who deliver our city services. Part of the reason I wanted to show you this slide is the relationship between the base salaries and the other types of compensation that come in the form of pension, health insurance, workers' comp, and other benefits. And so as we discuss adjustments, potential adjustments to the employee compensation, either through the number of positions or to the benefit and compensation packages, I wanted to focus on that there's some elements of this that are discretionary and some that are not. Some can be negotiated and some cannot. For example, I want to point to the pension unfunded liability. This is a fixed cost. CalPERS is billing you almost $1 million a year. This is all public safety and it's all general fund. That doesn't change. Regardless of the number of employees you have or what you pay those employees, you have a bill to CalPERS that reaches, it's $900,000 in this fiscal year. It's expected to grow in future fiscal years. And that is crowding out the money that's available for other services and other current active employee compensation. I also want to point out that the budget includes $1.1 million of overtime, and I would defer to the individual departments, the police chief, the fire chief, to identify if there are opportunities to adjust that number. Very difficult in a situation where the employee count has been reduced so far, but there is $1.1 million of overtime that, again, is not related to any individual employment contracts or compensation packages. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. The other part of the budget I wanted to highlight was the capital improvement program. And I wanted you to see how these projects add up very quickly to $28 million. The city has been very successful in leveraging its capital program with third-party money. You get federal and state grants. You have a Measure D local transportation tax that is also available to fund these programs. I listed out the projects that in the budget that exceeded $1 million. There is a full list of all the projects in your budget book on page 83. But these are the big ticket items. $10 million for Cesar Chavez Boulevard improvements. We have the New River Parkway for $4 million, and again, that's all third-party money. Measure D Street improvements, a 2nd Street bridge replacement. Now, this is a project that's funded with redevelopment money that became the successor agency, as you're aware, and you recently passed some documents that'll allow you to transfer those remaining proceeds to the city to complete a capital projects. So that $2.6 million is one-time money from the former redevelopment agency, now successor agency. And then we have a few other projects. Now, I want to call out that there's not a single dollar on this schedule that is general fund money. All $28 million are coming from restricted monies. If you cut any dollar from any of these projects, it would not increase the money you had in the general fund that are available to pay employee salaries or to fund operations. These programs are entirely funded from restricted monies. And again, you can see the full list of projects in the budget book in the capital projects section. These are the highlights. And again, I just want to commend the city for its success in leveraging third-party money to deliver services for your community. And now we get to reprise the general fund. And I don't want to repeat all my comments from last week, but I do want to, you've had a week to think about some of the comments and the policies options that are available to you. I just wanted to just briefly reprise where we are. This is a slide that you saw last week. We started we're losing $4 million a year. The city is spending, on an average, for each of the last 3 fiscal years, $4 million more than the revenue is taking in. And that's why I've titled this slide Reset. We need to reset and rethink the services that we are offering, how we deliver them, the cost of those services in order to rebalance our general fund. We had a $4 million reserve at June of 2014. And when I say reserve, I'm including both the general fund and the Measure H, because there's been confusion about apples and oranges, about whether we're talking about with or without the Measure H. But you add them together, we had $4 million. We spent all of that and more during the 14-15 fiscal year. And when I say more, it's because we drew down some bond proceeds to help balance the books for 14-15 so that we could close the books with a fund balance that was about zero. During 15-16, our projections right now are that we're also exceeding revenues by $3.5 million, almost $4 million. And the only way we are able to close the books this year is by presenting you with an opportunity to borrow money from your wastewater fund, and your attorneys have written up documents to provide a working capital loan that you need to repay. We need to balance our budget. The only way we can issue debt, basically the general fund is borrowing, is if we can show we have a demonstrated ability to repay that loan. And so this is not a good situation to be in. I would say the fog has cleared on the city's finances over the past few months, over the past year, and now we're in a situation where we have a pretty good handle on what 15-16 looks like. And 3.5 is the best information available as to what that deficit will be for the year. These are not actuals. You won't know your sales tax from the Board of Equalization until September. Your vendors will continue to send you bills for services provided during 15-16 up for the next 2 months. But all cities are in the situation where they have to adopt a budget for the coming year based on their estimated activities for the year. This is the best available information that we have. Even as recently as during the last week, we've been looking at trends for actual receipts and expenditures. We're tracking payroll by pay period to give you the best available information from which to make a policy decision. So the 15-16 expenditures is our best estimate. Could be more, could be less. I think that the risk is that it will be higher rather than lower. But again, that's what we're projecting at this time. Moving on to 16-17, the budget that has been submitted by your program departments compared to revenues the expenditures exceed the revenues by 3.9, another $4 million. We have 3 years in a row where expenditures are exceeding revenues by $4 million. And the unusual twist for 16-17 is that we have added the housing employees because they don't have current grants to pay for their costs. And we also have included a $1 million loan repayment to the wastewater fund. And so,
Could you just
again, I
repeat
just say the word reset.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch. What was the amount for housing?
It's just under 500,000.
Half a million. Thank you.
And so I can't emphasize enough the need to reset how we conduct business, the services we deliver, how we deliver those services, the cost of those services, in order to live within the revenues that are available to you to run the general fund. I've just said in words what this slide says in numbers. And when we compare, and we look to combine our general fund and our Measure H, we have 17 million of revenues. I'm going to just focus on the general fund. We have 14 million of revenues and 18 million of expenditures for a $4 million deficit. And that is why on the next slide we are presenting for you a framework, a balancing framework, the same slide we showed you last week. It's totally up to the City Council as to the policies they set as to how they are going to close this gap. A framework for discussion is to look at your revenues and to restore some fees that have been adjusted, and you took some action last week to begin that process. You have staff costs that you can look at in terms of either reducing the number of employees or the cost of your employee compensation packages. And then you have operating budgets as well. I think there's an opportunity to defer, and again, I'm not speaking with any knowledge of your program, but the budgets submitted by your program department directors include some equipment purchases that might be deferred, and I would rely on defer to those individual departments to support or contest those suggestions. But I think that there are some deferred equipment you could look at. There are clearly temporary help contracts that you pay to staff and supplement your city staff, and there are other costs here as well. And so when you look at this framework, and again, this is only a framework, we're looking at perhaps $500,000 of revenue adjustments, perhaps $3 million of salary adjustments implemented perhaps over 11 months. In that scenario, you would achieve 2.7 of savings, and again, perhaps operating expenditure reductions of 700. Your proposed budget includes these placeholders. They are only placeholders, and they are subject to your discretion and policy direction as to how the budget is balanced. At the end of the day, we need a general fund budget that is balanced, and we need to demonstrate the ability to repay the loan. You are able to borrow at June 2016 from your wastewater fund on the premise that you are demonstrating a balanced budget and intent to repay that loan back to your wastewater fund. And with these proposed reductions, the general fund budget would look like this, and we would be reducing your general fund expenditures to a level within your revenues. Before we turn to your questions, your observations, and your suggestions, I just want to talk about the next steps. We hope to receive feedback from you and from the public and from your new city manager about the proposed budget. I understand that you are continuing cost discussions. You're beginning and continuing cost discussion meetings with your employee groups. And so that brings us to Thursday night, because we do need to adopt a balanced budget. The reso that is in your budget book, and we have a draft of a reso for your consideration, looks at a 2-year budget, and the reason that it's 2 years is that this council has not been in a situation where it has been presented a budget for adoption for 15-16. There was a proposed spending plan that was put together a year ago that was not adopted, and so we would like to encourage the city council to put a budget in place for you to close your fiscal year. And we also need to formalize on Thursday the interfund loan agreement from the wastewater fund. But I do want to just stop for a minute and look at the budget reso and point out to you 2 unique items in the reso.
Where's
And
the
the reso
reso?
is in your proposed budget in tab 1. And if I could ask you to turn to page 6, please. This is a very short and standard budget resolution that is similar to what you would find at another city. And I do want to focus on Section 2, which is the level of budgetary control and the authority that you are delegating to your city manager to work within the budget for the year. When we talk about levels of budgetary control, it basically sets the boundaries for what budget control you would like to establish. And the recommended policy here is typical for other cities, where a budget is controlled by department within the general fund, and at the fund level for other funds, and at the project level within a capital project. And so basically you would be delegating to the city manager the authority to move budget between accounts within a department, but not between departments. For example, not between police and fire, but you would give the authority to the city manager to adjust accounts within a department as needed to run the business of the city. And then you would control the budget at the fund level for other funds and at the project level, meaning money could not be moved from one project to another without a formal amendment that would come back to you for your consideration. Section 3 of the budget is the one that I want to focus on here. And by adopting a budget with a placeholder reduction, it leaves the question as to finishing the plan. And we presented a framework to you, but there is an opportunity to work additionally with the departments to find ways to skinny down their budgets and to perhaps relieve the burden on reducing the salary and benefit costs for the city. And so we wanted to put in here a stopgap. We wanted to put in here a date by which those placeholders would be identified and implemented. We can't just talk about them, we actually have to put plans in place to change the spending patterns of the city to live within the revenues that are available. And so within Section 3 of the Budget Reso, I'd just like to clarify that we've identified that the budget, and highlighted that the budget includes $3.9 million in placeholder revenue, salary benefits, and operating cost adjustments, and that we've set a target by August 1st, 2016. You are directing the city manager to identify and implement changes to achieve those savings. And if adjustments are not identified by this date, then the city manager is directed to commence a reduction in employee staffing to reduce costs to a level that are within the revenues. So this is a very strong statement, and basically it allows city council to take full responsibility for adopting a balanced budget, demonstrating to the community that you will live within your revenues, and putting a date by which you will direct the city manager to identify and implement adjustments to either revenues or to the salary and benefit cost, or through other operating adjustments, and walks through the next steps should that not be achieved. This is a very difficult situation to be in. It is not, the city does not have a lot of options at this point. Given the magnitude of the reductions, it's hard to imagine that you will be able to make these changes without either reducing the number of employees or reducing the compensation. And so this is something that needs to be discussed and negotiated with the employee groups, and I'm very glad to hear that those discussions have started. But the purpose of this section of the budget reso is to make a statement and for City Council to acknowledge that it will be adopting a balanced budget for the year and is putting plans in place to make that happen. And so with that, I'm very happy to take any questions that you have or to hear your feedback and your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I have a first questions. You don't know how to drawing, so you don't make the comic book.
There's 115 pages. You're talking about the severity of the budget book. It's a boring book. It's 115 pages of numbers, Excel spreadsheets. I will say that this is not a best practice. A best practice is to introduce the programs of the city, the services they provide, to describe benchmarks, how you are evaluating the call response time, the number, every program that you offer has metrics. The best practice for a budget is to describe those programs and the metrics that you are able to achieve with this budget. This is not a best practices budget. This is a Excel spreadsheet that attempts to make strides in building transparency over your actual spending.
But for us, we can be more concentrated to see the number instead of distracting.
The only focus in the budget is numbers.
I have a question. Mr. City Manager, have we considered the possibility of looking at city property that was at one time had interest in being purchased by private individuals? I know that we had the Finnegan property specifically, which is out there. I'm not sure if we've looked at that. I know that there's along Cesar Chavez Boulevard, Edward Del Real was interested in purchasing property out there. Fair market value, whatever that may be in a commercial zone, but I mean, is it generating revenue for the city? It would, we're charging rent, but this would be something that may, if we sell a parcel of land, I mean, how much could it be? A couple $100,000 or something like that, but that would, again, may reduce the overall deficit. What do you think, Mr. Real?
If I may, my understanding, because it is an RDA property, if you sell it, the amount that would come to the city is, I mean, it's nothing pretty much. And so the city,
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
the city benefits more from renting it out at this moment. It's
And-
cash coming in on a monthly
So
basis
those
versus selling
two
it.
that I mentioned are RDA, are in the RDA?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all the RDA project is, I went to the workshop on those. All the project, if we sell, the city only have a city portion only. So we have a very little portion, we're gonna get the money. And beside that, if we want to keep the property under the city have to create the project. So when they create the project, then we can say we're gonna pay to the $1 to the state altogether. So the city gonna own it. That only can the city have 100% ownership later on if we have a project. So I believe I agree with Mr. Real, the best of the interest of the city to keep that areas to build a future project to take over the land to the city. Go ahead.
I have,
So what I can do is I can probably do an inventory of the property that the city owns, and then it is true that if it's owned, RDA-owned property, and if you sell it, the proceeds of the sale have to go back to the taxing entities that were
Yes.
asked to not take advantage of the tax increment. But I can certainly, if it's the wish of the council, we can definitely look at city-owned property that could be leased out to generate extra revenue.
I have a few questions, and maybe it's more of a question slash comment, but first question is, how did this happen? My question is, in 2009, we had 276 employees. And how are we in 2015 with 173? But that's one question, if you have an answer. But another one is, how many years have we been overspending by 4 million? You said 3 years?
My experience with the city is limited to the past year. I can't speak past the last 3 years.
Okay.
But I did help produce the CAFR for 2014. So that's why I can tell you that the fund balance at that point in time was $4 million. And each of the successive years, I have looked at those numbers. I can't tell you what has happened since you had 260 employees. What I can tell you is that the cost of the current 146 employees at today's salaries, pension, health, and other benefit programs cost $17 million. So what I can speak to is the current cost. I can't speak to you what has changed. I think redevelopment dissolved. That's one thing that's changed probably since then. But I don't have history with the city to tell you any more than that.
But for the last 3 years, there has been overspending of $4 million approximately every year,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
For example, we have a 2009.
Now, hold on, I'm not done. But in 14, 15, it was more than 4 million, correct, in total? Because if they spent, here's where the numbers don't match. If they spent 4 million of the reserves plus another 4 million that they went over, so 14, 15, they went close to 8 million, 9 million? Is that, how much was it in total?
There was a bond draw that helped shore up those reserves, so we drew some restricted funds. We basically reimbursed the general fund and Measure H for some equipment purchases that qualified for bond draw. So we were able to patch together June 2015 by supplementing the beginning reserve balances with a bond draw. So the expenditure deficit was greater than 4 million in 14-15.
Do you have an idea how much, was it 6 million?
I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers.
You're not sure? Okay. That's what she said. There was 4.7 million in reserves? June, correct?
The number on the slide is 4 million. I can't
Okay.
tell you
Okay.
the precise amount.
Okay, I have some of this data from the State Controller's Office. 2009, we have about over 250 employees, and we spending about $13 million payroll. 2014, we have around 180 employees, about 100 employees less. We paying same. And also 2011, we have a big employee cut, but same time, we have pay increase, almost say 2010, 2011 pays almost same salary, but we have over 100 employees less.
Do you have copies
Is that
of that for Olives? Do you have copies?
Is that a question or a comment?
So So what is caused it? Because salary hike or something else?
I think there is pressure on the cost of the pensions and the health program and the workers' comp. All of these benefits are expensive programs. I showed you before that almost $1 million, $900,000 of the general fund is going to pay for past actuarial losses on the pension program. When we look at the cost of
Can you have the audience not, I can't hear, the audience is a little loud, sorry.
when we look at the cost of the pension program, and I'm going to repeat some comments I made last week, because we're not all actuaries, right? When an employee provides a year of service, they earn a year of service credit. And ideally, the employee and the employer is funding the present value of that cost for their future retirement. But that's based on actuarial projections. And the actuaries are always right or wrong. And in this case, the pension contributions that have been recommended by the CalPERS actuaries over time are costing the city $900,000 in 16-17. CalPERS amortizes those losses over 20 or 30 years, depending on the type of loss. There were significant investment losses in 2007, 2008 that the city will pay for 20 or 30 years, because that's how long CalPERS amortizes those losses over. There are other demographic changes, people are living longer, and other things as well. But $900,000 is the cost to the general fund for 1 year for past actuarial losses. And so as you've asked, what has changed in the employee cost structure? So the largest change is in the pension program, the cost of the pension program. Certainly the health costs are escalating faster than a normal cost of living, and the workers' comp program as well. So these are all expensive benefits that the city provides, just like other cities. These are typical benefits to provide to employees, but in this case they are probably contributing to the increase in the cost per employee relative to the prior years you have been quoting.
Ms. Meyer, just so I can understand what you just said with regard to the 900,000, you described that as a yearly loss, but is it more the contribution?
I would call it the debt service payment on the unamortized actuarial losses. So since inception, the cumulative difference between what you have paid in and the present value of your future obligations to your employees
Okay.
for their service to date is called the unamortized unfunded liability.
Got it.
Your
Okay, so
unfunded
then,
liability is a debt that needs to be repaid.
Correct.
CalPERS charges you an annual debt service payment. It's called unfunded liability, and in your case, for 1 year, that debt service payment is $900,000.
and so the 900,000 of that actuarial loss that was calculated that we are responsible for, on top of that, we still have the other contributions that are expected on a yearly basis.
Which is called the normal cost. The normal cost for an employee's what they have earned for 1 year of service credit.
Were we placing this type of future liability in our balance sheet in the previous cycles of fiscal information? Or is this where we're now clearing up and ensuring that this is showing as a liability?
So this item is not new. CalPERS has always charged you a portion for amortizing its unfunded liability, but this has grown over time.
Okay.
I can't quote you numbers, but I'm certain that this number is significantly larger in the last few years because of the large investment losses and the change in the demographic assumptions as to how long all of our retirees will live.
And I think maybe if we just clarify for the public and for anyone here that the city contributes 100% of the contribution, retirement contribution for the employee?
I think it might differ by employee group, and I'm
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
I can't quote you by group.
True, the cost of a retirement is split between the city's cost and then what would be considered an employee cost. It's been the past practice of the city to absorb both costs. And, there's current legislation that would actually now require us to go, in 2018, will require us to recuperate a percentage of that from the employee. But that won't happen until 2018.
Your audited financial statements have an extensive pension footnote that describe the the funding status of your pension plans and that the dollar amount of your unamortized liability. And I'm sorry I don't have those numbers with me, but there is a place you could go look for more information on this topic.
I have some question from the public. Lorena Minor.
Lorena Minor, CMEA. In Maribel Padilla's words, I'm here again to remind you, and I guess Section 3 was already kind of explained to me by Ms. Mayor, and I was going to ask about that. But it is stipulated that on August 1st, 2016, the city manager will make adjustments, yet Ms. Mayor is saying that in September, sales tax are still coming in. So why is it that in August 1st, you guys have to have positions, well, it doesn't say positions eliminated, it says placeholders removed, yet money's still coming in September? That's one. Two, with my group in CMEA, we haven't met in over 2 years. I already told you that at the last meeting. Mr. Ortiz, your labor attorney, can confirm with you that we had a meeting on May 17th, and it was canceled by your administration. So the city is not negotiating in good standing and in good faith with my group. So, you know, what's going on? If you guys knew there was no money, if you guys knew that you guys were in a hole, that why is the city not negotiating in good faith with CMEA? Think about that, reset your button, and tell my group what's going on. Now, another thing is, we see this section here, the people that are making $50,000, $45,000, $40,000, $35,000 or less a year, we're not going to sleep tonight. Like Mr. Javier Gonzalez said, you know, our quality of life is going to go down. How are we going to decide to pay our bills, to pay our water payment, us that live here in Calexico, to pay our electric bills at the end of the month with this heat? And then it doesn't help that Councilmember Real keeps posting these numbers on his Facebook that we make $80,000, $90,000 a year. When I spoke to some of my coworkers today, and some of these numbers, I don't know who's giving him these numbers or where he's putting them, they're not true.
The state control.
I'm sorry, I'm not asking you, I'm just saying in general.
You asked
The
me.
state controller, who is giving the state controller these numbers?
response.
These are
City.
not real numbers. That's
They are.
not what we're making. That is not what we're making. Then if it is what we're making, then I guess the city owes us purse. Because that's not what we're making. The city really needs to sit down and see. People are getting mad at us because supposedly we're making all this money, and we're not. We're really not. So think about it, council, because you guys are pissing off people before you guys do this. It's not the employee's fault that the city has no money. And like Mr. Real says, the city of El Centro has wonderful benefits for their employees as well. That's why a lot of us work here, because we work for the government. And you know what? We provide a wonderful service for the community. The employees do. Every single day, we provide. So if you guys are going to cut placeholders, decide we're going to do it, because we're already working on a skeleton crew. On Fridays, some of us don't take a lunch break. Most of us don't take breaks. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Gonzalez.
Javier Gonzalez, 237 Hernandez. I want to reiterate what Lorena Minor, because I posted those things from Mandy, and I still can't believe that it says Sergeant 167, and then there's another Sergeant 110, so I'm going to verify that, because I've been posting it, but I'm taking it because it's a state controller, but we need to check that if it's true or where the green number. It's a big difference. I mean, people get mad, 167,000, one Sergeant, the other 110, wow. But if they're not true, we need to check that, so I want to make that clear. Second of all, you just stated something very important. This is very important numbers, and we know that Mr. Warren administration and Baltic just send us to. But I think you just said about the real budget, where we focus on programs, services. We haven't done that in a while. I went to Coachella Valley to help on the Battle of the Badges, and they were telling me that over there, the police department, they send out, especially to neighborhood watch, they help them, they buy signs for them, but they send statics. How many crimes in which area, complaints, and also like recreation department. There's sports, there's senior services. What are the type of programs they're doing? How many complaints? What are the partnerships that they have? And how much is spent in each level? What she said right now, that is boring. But we need that type of, we don't know how many complaints have you had in the city overall. You guys don't know. By department, you guys don't know. Another thing that I just saw, it's we're gonna help. I'm getting ready, my neighbors, we don't want our community, our trees, our parks to be dry. We're gonna help some way. We're gonna cut it ourselves with our lawnmowers, but we need to keep it clean. But you guys also have to focus. Right now, I just saw that the enterprise department, they have 27 million. Go watch the reservoir. Why is it dirty? Why is it full of I got a complaint. I don't know about you. Why? They have money. Why is it like that? I mean, it's something that's not fair. That my neighbors are getting ready because we're gonna ask the city manager to train us. We're gonna sign waivers, but we want Kennedy Gardens is that Kennedy Gardens. We have more parks than the whole city, I think, but you guys can't see them. They're behind the houses. We want them green. But I just want to focus that what you just mentioned about the real budget. We have services, complaints, call time. Where is that? We haven't known. I mean,
Okay,
how many complaints have you had? Thank you.
This time we talking about the budget specifically. So right now, so Ms. Mary is there. We questioning about the numbers or what on the
Yeah,
budget.
but you just mentioned about the
Other
real
activities we can talk later on
That's
after
right.
the budget.
Let me, Ms.
Thank you.
Mayor, because, another question. The California State Controller, the numbers that they have on their website, are they fake numbers?
Are you referring to the compensation report?
Correct.
It's filed by your payroll staff
Okay.
with the state controller on an annual basis.
And can
And
the
the-
city lie to the state controller and give them fake numbers?
There's no incentive to do so.
Okay.
You mentioned that there were fluctuations between employees, and often it's related to leave payouts at separation. Sometimes it's related to overtime. Certain officers, and the particular class that was mentioned, I think was one of the public safety positions, different officers receive different compensation based on certificates they hold or special training or special assignments. So there can be wide fluctuations from employee to employee, primarily due to overtime.
But the numbers are real.
I have no reason to believe the city would have any
Okay.
incentive other than to report actual information.
I'll save my comments for council comments on this.
Okay, Mr. Acuna, Sean Acuna. Please don't punish the Ms. Mayor. She's the presenting our
Don't
budget.
kill the messenger.
Yeah, go just check with the numbers and the things.
Don't kill the messenger.
No problem. Sean Acuna, Calexico Police Officers Association. Just wanted to comment, somebody mentioned about the sergeants making over $100,000. That is true, but that's Stone Garden money. That's not general fund overtime. All the overtime that's been created by our police department, the majority of it comes from grant funds. Stone Garden, Office of Traffic Safety, and other entities that come in the form of grants. So I think it's very important for the public to know that when you see officers making, inflated salaries, it's because of grant money. It's not from the general fund. And it's very important to put that out there because it's not fair for the other employees to think that we get these exuberant salaries from the general fund when it's not true.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Mayor, may I?
Go ahead.
So out of I believe the last year's police budget was 5.9 million? Is that correct? I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. Out of the 5.9 million, how much, what was the grant for Stone Garden grant?
How much funds did we receive?
Correct.
I think it was in the neighborhood of $150,000, if I'm correct.
So that's pretty much just that one officer.
Right, but before, our overtime or grant funds were much higher. I think it was in the neighborhood of $300,000.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different.
So it's about $150,000 that you guys received last year for,
Right, but
Stone
in
Garden.
years past, it's been much higher, like in the neighborhood of around 300,000. So that's how you have certain people that were able to make.
Also,
much
the
more.
police department is lacking funds because of the, our police department being taken out of the task force. That's also hurting the city, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you have an idea why that happened? Let me guess, the corruption.
Well, part of it, believe it or not, was there was a pact.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll defer that to the
To the
chief.
chief, okay.
But there are reasons for that.
Well, but that's some monies, the reason I asked is that's some monies that usually would come in every year to the police department from, I guess, LA Impact, that's the name of the.
Right, and there are
Correct.
funds that are still
Mr.
being
Real.
generated from that as we
Mr. Real,
speak.
let's say that when you ask the employees, we have to be very careful to be asking what they're not asking. We
Well, it's
just
a budget
asking for the
question.
what they
Okay.
explain
It's-
that themselves, you can ask them, but the other side, more details of the budget, actually, the police officer, they're not knowing, and you're asking them what is going on.
I'm just asking a question. Okay.
You're done?
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
So anything, so council member to have questions to the Ms. Mayor
Thought you said we
or
can't ask
public? So is there any chance we can have a raising of revenue beside the general fund?
So let's
I
take a
mean,
look at the
general fund
revenue
revenue?
schedule. I'm going to show you the revenue schedule in your budget book and show you where you get your money from and show you who controls those rates. So your budget book revenues, page 22 and 23 present a two-page summary of the revenues available to the general fund. California Constitution says that we can't raise taxes without a vote of the people. And so when you look at the sources of revenue in the general fund, it's primarily property tax and sales tax. These are tax rates that are established by the state, or in your case, your local voters have supported the Measure H additional transactions tax, sales tax. But when you look at the pie chart at the top of page 22, you can see that a huge portion of the general fund revenue comes from property tax and sales tax. There are other general revenues that you control locally, and then finally there are program revenues that are earned, the fees that are charged by your park and rec or your police department or your fire department. I mean, so which of these revenues do you control? There are very few that you control. And here's the reason why. Once you cross from a tax to a fee, you are able to assess that fee because there is a nexus to the cost of the services provided. We can't simply raise fees because then that would be a tax, and that would be a subject to the vote of the people. The fees are limited to the cost recovery of the cost of the service to provide those services.
Can I stop you there for 1 second? So what you're saying is when the that Maxima study that was done, so what it was it was to raise revenues, correct? But by charging more fees, but at the same time, they can't just do that without increasing salaries, because if you did that, then it would be a tax.
I would use the word
Correct.
match. You're
So
matching
you got to
the-
match.
You're matching the revenue with the cost to provide that service.
Okay, understood.
But Maximus, those bring for the more higher impact fee and the fees, but not impacting the city employees, what's called salaries.
Yeah, it does.
No, what I understanding, city, the former administration, they using Irwin study, using that for
Irwin.
the Irwin program to raise the salaries, not the Maximus. Even some of the city manager was sue the city to get the higher salaries that time.
Okay.
And now having some data here at Central, they have a $15 million expenditure for the whole payrolls. They have over 300 employees, 2014.
350 to be exact.
Yeah, over 300 employees they have it. They're spending $15 million as payrolls. and their pay per employee over $50,000 for 2009. Now they have about $45,000 per employee, the salaries.
So what you're saying is salaries went down?
Yes. They were number down, the employees was down, 2009, they had about 2,070, 80, and 2010 same, 11, they gone down, close to about 200.
Can you put that up there? Why not? Could you reconnect the laptop and get those figures up there?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you do that? That way, I mean, because you're talking figures, but the public can't see them, so maybe it's a good idea to. Or you can use Gabby's laptop, maybe. Let me, Gabby, do you want to do it on yours and I'll get on there?
Tres. ¿Escucha? Bueno,
5 minutes for recess. Thank you. Okay. No recess.
While you're fixing that, the Finance Commission, I just was remember we want to thank Mrs. Myers and the Finance Department. They've been great. I mean, there's a lot of things we want to say and do, but we're just getting out of the way. They're the experts. We just want to thank you, ma'am. You've done a great job. Eduardo, your staff, thank you very much on behalf. I just talked to the other commissioners. It's just, you've been great. We're just trying to help and just want to thank you, people. Thank you.
May we ask some questions while they're setting up? Yep. Ms. Meyer, with regard, may I, Mr. Mayor? While you set that up, may I continue asking some questions, or do you want to sit here while we're doing that? Ms. Meyer, we have had many fiscal impact with regard to some of the activities and decisions that this council has made in the last year. And then some of the fiscal impacts that you call them risks, that we are experiencing, that you just clarified that the fiscal impact with regard to the housing department's problems in this city, you indicated that the fiscal impact appears to be around half a million. Is that what you said, around?
I'd like to clarify what that includes.
Sure.
The salary and benefit budget for the existing housing employees is just under $500,000. The general fund budget has absorbed those in the proposed budget because there is no grant revenue to pay for those employees
Correct.
at this time.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's really important in analyzing the big picture that we're looking at here, and those issues. That is a list of issues you have already given to us, and I have paid attention to what you have given to us from fiscal year to fiscal year. And so as far as fiscal impacts, then, I wanted to learn the fiscal impact, and thank you for clarifying, because I know that the majority of our conversation are fiscal impacts to general fund. Because, for example, like the housing department provides other services that at this point, we're not even doing that either. As far as, is that correct, City Manager? First-time homebuyer programs, all that kind of stuff that the city usually provides under the housing program is, at this point, frozen? Is that correct? We are not providing any services whatsoever to our community with regard to housing needs, or what the housing program usually provides? I guess the easy question is our housing department basically shut down, or are we doing some other work that we're cleaning up, something else that we...
The housing department is not shut down. We continue
No,
to
I know it's
provide-
not shut down. What I meant to say, the services being provided to the community, are we still providing those services to the community?
We are still providing a certain level of service. The only thing we can't do is capitalize or charge back to the state, because they're not issuing grant funding, or we can't use the grants they're giving us to pay for the salaries.
Okay.
We still have a certain amount of compliance that we have to do.
Clients? Did you say
regardless-
clients?
Compliance, housing compliance.
Oh, compliance.
For all the programs and all the projects that we have in the past.
Okay.
So we continue to have to do that.
Okay. So in essence, we still are providing something, in which I would like to have those details, because the housing department then is one of our fiscal impacts. Then the other fiscal impact that you mentioned was having lowered those fees in January with regard to the impact fees and the business licenses. So that there's another $500,000, correct? So we've got already $1 million between those two items that are pushing us over, correct? Okay. I think that the last question I wanted to know your estimate, and I'd like to know the overall estimate, because it was not told to us, and I heard you say it the last time, but I need you to clarify that today, is the turnover to the new insurance. That previously we had a full coverage policy with a company by the name of JPIA, and JPIA then, the council then decided that there was going to be some activity in our management that promoted or prompted JPIA to cut us from the program. So when that occurred, many of us were not in agreement with that, but it did occur, and we did lose the JPIA, and we were then turned over to a new style even of coverage. So we didn't know the impact at that time either. The decision was made anyway. But I do want to know what that impact was per fiscal year. For example, what we're looking at for the future where the staff is being asked to take a 30%, the 16-17. What would be the full picture on that one?
Hello?
I would like to respond to your comments about housing and also about the liability program. Just to follow up on your comments on housing, you mentioned risks, and the general fund budget is absorbing the risk of the housing salaries. There are still other tremendous risks in your housing funds. And one of my statements about this budget book is that we were providing transparency on all the funds and programs of the city. And in the housing section of the budget book, you'll see a listing of all the housing funds. There are over 20, I think there are 15 or 20 housing funds. Some have positive cash balances, some have negative cash balances. And those are going through an audit by a third party to identify which are eligible costs and which are not. So to partially answer your question, those housing funds, loans that have been extended, continue to be repaid. The city is accumulating program income that will be available for the loan program you discussed, the first-time homebuyer, and other loan programs as well. So the city continues to get a cash flow from those loan programs that will be available to reinvest into the housing programs in the future when you get out of the frozen situation. But right now, those grant programs are on hold. And so when we look at the general fund risk, as you said, right now, all we've addressed is the housing employee costs for the coming year. We still have risk from past administrative costs and also possible ineligible costs from the housing program. But I encourage you, if you want to read more about the housing program, there is a section of the book now that discusses all the housing funds and lists their cash balances from which you can assess the risk from the housing programs.
Ms. Meyer, in a guesstimate, your best guesstimate as far as that risk, that particular risk, that $500,000 risk, what's your best estimate as far, because we know that that still has a single audit open. I believe it's the 14, 15?
The single audits have been issued through 14. I'm not close enough to the program activities that are under audit in the housing funds to give you an assessment. I can tell you which funds have negative cash balances, and that's printed in your book, but we'll rely on the results of the third-party auditor to inform the City Council on the overall risk.
City Manager, I think it's important to know the history of that issue, because the Housing Department is quite a bit of this problem that we're seeing as far as the going over our budget. And it's been this way, I believe, 2 years now. And so it's important, I think, for us when we're making these decisions to know, I call it that bleeding. If that bleeding is going to continue, how long? We would like to know that, because if we're also going to know that the bleeding may stop 6 months from now, then at least we know what we're going to have available to us, another $500,000 after 6 months. So could we kind of analyze that part too? Because that's a big one. Because, like, for example, you're going to let us know what the fiscal impact was for the transition into a new insurance. I know that's permanent. And I know that that amount was not expected probably before, and now we have to carry that as well.
So with respect to the general liability insurance costs, and I'm going to speak about the 15-16 fiscal year, there were two problems. First of all, there was a bill that was due to the JPA on July 1st that provided general liability insurance for the year. And it wasn't budgeted. There was only a couple $100,000 budgeted for a bill that it was far in excess of $1 million. So the first problem is that the city didn't even budget for the existing policy it had in place. That was the first problem. The second problem was that you paid for a full year of coverage on July 1st, and then you had to pay again for 6 months of coverage on January 1st through a new provider. And as a result, you were charged for a year and a half of liability coverage that wasn't budgeted sufficiently in the first place. A good portion of the deficit for 15-16 is due to the problems with the general liability program.
What was the fiscal impact for 15-16, approximately? Straight across the board as far as workers' comp, general liability. I guess we want to compare. That's probably what I want to do. What was it costing us for insurance previously?
I don't want to misquote this number, so I need to follow up with you and give you, in fact, that was one of the enhancements of this budget book that was on our wish list to do, was to provide a summary of the insurances and the insurance costs.
Awesome.
But there are schedules we just simply didn't get to in this version. But I think it's important information to be transparent about that. I can tell you that the 16-17 budget for general liability is under $1 million citywide. The cost of under $1 million. It's significantly less. Now, all this you are self-insured now. And so these are truly estimates. These are actuarial projections. And the thing about a liability claim is that it doesn't even have to be reported to you for a year. So you simply work on actuarial projections, and it will be a long time before you build up enough track record as a self-insured plan provider to build credible numbers.
Do you mean that even though right now at this time our policy premiums are a certain amount and our reserves are now required, and we're trying to build that reserve, but I think what you're trying to say is that when any claims are being submitted, there's going to be a certain portion that's going to affect our general fund, and that is the unknown at this time. Is that correct?
That's right. We work off of actuarial projections, and the cost of the program includes the stopgap, the excess insurance. It also includes the administrative costs. It also includes the estimate of the claims, the self-insured retention on the claims.
Ms. Mayor, would you help me to finding out workers' comp and liability last year's, which is 14-15 we spent it, or 15-16?
I can show you in 16-17 what the salary and benefit projection is. So let's just start there. Page 15 slices and dices the salary.
15?
Page 15, 1-5, slices and dices the cost of the employee compensation, salaries, overtime, pension, medical, workers' comp, and total. This shows you how we arrive at the 17 million projection, and the projection is laid out here by general fund department and by other funds. Workers' compensation is projected at 1.1 million across all city funds. And this is actually a little bit less than the broker recommended because the employee count has dropped, and so the exposure for workers' comp has dropped as well because of that. So I can show you the 16-17 as we just discussed. We would like to put together summary schedules for each of the city's insurance programs. The city has 4 insurance programs. They have the general liability, the workers' comp, the health, and unemployment. You actually run 4 separate insurance companies, and we would like to build those schedules to show you what the track record is for each of those programs. And unfortunately, that information just wasn't put together in time for tonight's presentation, but that's something we can clearly follow up with you and show you that trend for each of those programs.
I can't find the number.
For workers' comp, on page 1-5, workers' comp is the 3rd column from the right, and this shows you that there's $1.1 million budgeted for workers' comp. Again, this is 16-17.
14 or 15? Oh, okay.
And the proposed budget, you know, yeah.
Okay, $1.1 million for the workers' comps. What about the liabilities?
The cost of liability program is spread by fund within this document, and so I don't have a clear page where I can.
Okay. And for the record, JPIA charged us to workers' compensation 15-16, $1.5 million. $1.5 million. 15-16 years, 15-16, JPIA charged us workers' comp $1.5 million, $3,010. $1.5 million, $3,010.
My understanding was that, and I don't know if Nick Finley,
They're from our funds,
but Nick Finley could elaborate on the cost savings that there is now with the new insurance.
Yes, I think.
Because I think what Councilwoman Hurtado is trying to say is that that because JPA was taken away, that our insurance is more expensive, and I don't believe that's the case.
No, actually, the question is what the actual turnover cost was, not the cost of a yearly basis of having the policy, the actual turnover.
We pay the turnover the cost. We still cheaper than what the JPI said charge us.
You want me to elaborate on what's up here? You want to say it? I don't know. Is this thing working?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
But wait, please. Let's take care of the Ms. Mayor's question first. Then we do.
The general liability budget is included in each of the funds and the programs. I don't have a summary schedule here that recaps the total for the past year and the current year. That's something that we can put together and provide to you, but I don't have it tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Myers, one more big question, actually, and I had tried to see if maybe this attorney here or the gentleman had anything to do with the development of the plan for the, I'm going to jump super ahead, with regard to the resolution. It's not in this book here, but in our other stuff that we had in the last meeting, it went a little more into detail. Now, I recall that it says something about that structures like that for repayment and things like that, they actually can have a term limit to 5 years. Is that correct? Is that what I read?
I don't think that there's any requirement. I think that it's a matter of policy. We want to get the loan paid off to reduce the interest and to get you freed up for the future. So at this point, we've structured the loan with a 4-year repayment plan. I think it's up to City's Council discretion how you do that. Ideally, you will get done with the debt repayment so that you can focus on rebuilding reserves as well. So the ideal solution will both retire the debt and build reserves over time.
Okay, I understand that, but my question was, did I read correctly where we can actually, the terms can go up to 5? Is that what I read? Okay. I understand that, and I believe that that is a very conservative way of thinking. However, when our staff is looking at 30%, I believe that because it is interesting, we have so many different fiscal years to look at, and if you don't have your head on straight, it's kind of hard to see what relates to what, right? Besides the fact that we have a new chart of accounts and your style and your structure that's coming in here is very appreciated because it's what should be modern. And I also noticed the way that there's a little bit of a different structure as far as how we handle the appearance of the Measure H handling, where previously we added it together with the other general fund income, and now it's being used kind of sort of like a reimbursement, kind of. Instead of saying it's available revenues, we're actually bringing it in and having it reimbursed in different areas. It's a different structure, and I believe that, that's fine, just recognizing that. However, if I kind of relate it to just anything in general, if I'm being asked to pay back a certain loan, and you can give me 5 years instead of 4, and in this situation, I believe that maybe we might want to entertain that option to stretch the loan that may be needed here into a longer period of time. Because when I look at this information, it's kind of like, I know it's because we're looking at multi fiscal years, is that it's awkward to look at to say, we're going to lend ourselves this money right now, but then in 5 minutes we got to turn around and make the first $1 million check, as far as, debt service payment. And so it's a heavy burden to have to take right now, $1 million, to if we actually have that way and we're lending it to ourselves, why couldn't we have more flexibility with that? Did anybody have that as an option? Because, I think about this. There's people that are drafting these items and they just don't know our staff. They don't know our situation. And so in a way, it kind of feels so cut and dry when you hear 30%. But then you're also looking at a loan interest instrument that actually can have a little more wiggle room. So my recommendation or suggestion would be, let's look at that wiggle room and not feel so tight at this period of time. I'm sorry, Mr. Real, I was...
The structure of the repayment is entirely a policy. The structure of the repayment is entirely a policy choice. It's entirely you are correct. It's entirely a policy direction. Here's my greatest concern, that the $3.5 million deficit is an estimate. Could be better, but could also be worse. My next concern is that you're approaching the next fiscal year with no reserve. What if you need some capacity? My concern about stretching that loan too far is that you really eliminate and don't call the question on balancing your budget. But you are entirely right. The structure of that repayment is a council policy decision, and it could be one of your balancing solutions to adjust that. My greatest concern is that there is no reserve and there's very little wiggle room.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Mayor, as I have a more question on the workers' comp. What I understanding, we have a $1.1 million, $1 million, $159,000 we have set the next year. If we don't use this amount of money, we don't have to put this same amount of the money next year. Am I right?
You are self-insured, and the
Yes.
number will fluctuate greatly with the claims experience in any given year. 1 year it might be more than that, 1 year it might be less than that. You've moved into a new arena where you are self-insured.
Mhm.
And so you are reliant on actuarial projections. And so I think it would be some number of years before I would take money back out of the program again. I wouldn't recommend you remove money from the program until you've established a record for your claims practice as a self-insured entity.
So, and yes, even long run, probably that we pay this amount of money every year, probably a certain level, we don't have to put much amount of money anymore because we already reached some reserve under that fund.
This is your actuarial's projection of the cost of your exposure for the year.
Okay.
This doesn't build reserves. This is the cost of the exposure for the year. It includes the excess insurance policy, plus the expected claims experience,
Mhm.
plus the cost for the administration of the program. So this does not include money to build a reserve. This is the expected exposure for the year. In fact, it's less than what the broker recommended because we've used a percentage of payroll based on the broker's recommendation. Because the employee count has come down, this actually is a little bit less than what the broker had recommended. The actual-
But in case if we don't use it this much, if we don't have much workers' claim,
You are correct that a large portion of this number is actual claims experience, the actual claims submitted by your employees. And these are not numbers that you will know until after claims are submitted, evaluated, and it takes 10 years to pay out some workers' comp claims. And so, again, this is an actuarial projection. You're just stepping into the self-insurance game. And so I encourage you to rely on actuarial estimates until you have a proven track record of what it really costs to run the program.
thank you. But I have to correct it. JPIA actually did charge us $1.7 million, 15-16. They charge 1.5, and then they have an annual adjust 214 more. So $1.7 million they charge us.
Mayor, can I start my presentation, please?
Mr. Yanes?
Have a presentation.
Manuel Yañez. I just had a question for Mrs. Mayor. I made a comment ticket two sessions before about the measure age. It looks like the measure age, you just want to put it on the general fund. I don't see any way that measure age funds going to go again to the parks, to safety, to fire department. I don't see nothing like that. I don't know how come this is going to come in the future. When? How?
Would you like me to
Yes, please.
respond? Yes. And so, responding to both your comment and the earlier comment about the city's accounting practices for the Measure H funds. And I can tell you in different years, different finance employees have treated those revenues differently. Sometimes they have been reported in the general fund, sometimes they have been in a separate fund. It's inconsistent between years.
Ms. Myers, and doesn't our auditors group it together too in their presentations?
And yes, you are correct, and there's a reason for that, because we follow general accepted accounting principles for governments. GASB requires governments to report all their unrestricted monies together in a single column, and so for financial reporting purposes, both the funds are combined in your audited financial statements. But to provide transparency to the public and to the Measure H committee, there is a separate fund established in the new Springbrook system that receipts the sales tax that comes in every month, and then that money is used first to pay debt service. There's about
I understand. I understand your comment. I still haven't received the answer.
and the question is,
My question is, when those funds are going to be available to Measure H? For those funds were created, were sold to the public as the Measure H was sold as for parks. Those funds are for parks, for safety, for the fire, for the swimming pool. They are not for the general fund. I know that it's legal, but if something is legal, but it's not moral, you know, the administration is lying to the citizens of Calexico. That's what I believe. That's my question. When the Measure H funds are going to come again for the parks where they belong? I don't know. It's a question.
so the Measure H funds were used to leverage a bond issue, which has provided capital money for a fire station, the swimming pool, and park improvements, right?
I know,
So-
yeah.
So separate from that, you're talking about the money that comes in each year, the current sales tax.
Yes.
So
That's
there's
my
about
question, yes.
2.7 million, of which $1 million goes for debt, and then it's a policy choice as to how those monies are allocated. They have been allocated for $1.2 million for police and fire salaries. They've also been paying for a $200,000 annual lease on a fire truck, and then the residual.
I know all those. But a section there mentioned that it's going to be for parks. It's not in the money that is left goes, 200 and something goes to the general fund. Almost $300,000 goes to general fund. That's my question. Why the general fund is picking those funds when they belong to the parks?
Okay.
You see in the parks.
I think that I already heard the answer from the Ms. Mayor, said all the unrestricted fund has to be put together.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I know.
why they're together.
Yeah, but that was not the way that was sold to the public. That's okay. I had the answer. I already know the answer. I just want to make clear about
And
it.
also,
I had another comment.
I'm the one also who chased the major H money. The past administration, they spending money in the bracket, but they spend so much money. And excessive money, they use it, but they're still using inside the bracket. But they use money without authorization by the major H money.
I know. I
committee.
had another comment.
That is the
Mr.
issue.
Keith.
And also, the city of Calexico or current administration or past administration, they didn't steal the money from the major H money, and they're not lying to the community. And they did the past administration. They spend the money without any recommendation through the major H. That's the biggest issue that they have.
And now we can see it. Is how we're going to spend. I got another comment related with you. You, as a city council member, you were elected by the citizens of Calexico. You represent the citizens of Calexico. All I want to you, Mr. Castro, Mr. Real, Mr. Kim, Mr. Moreno, and Mr. Hurtado, all of you represent 40,000 people. Not 144 or 150. Please, work for the citizens, not for only a group of people. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yanes. We have worked for the citizens.
Don't forget, Mr. Yanez, your staff is your people, and it is your community.
Okay, Ms. Mayor, I think we have a more council member questioning. The Castro, Mr. Real.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding Mr. Yanis' comment, and I think in a nutshell what he's trying to say is that what this budget entails and what the past budgets that you showed us entails is that in a way the council is circumventing the process that Measure H was sold to the public as, which is for funding for parks and public safety, but what in reality what the council's doing or possibly could do here is just use it without going through that procedure of taking it to the board, the Measure H board, which causes a lot of people on Measure H to ask themselves, why are we here if the council can just overrule the Measure H board? And I think that's something that was sold to the public years ago. It's unfortunate that they lied to the public and said it was for that, and in reality it's pretty much general fund money the way it was the verbiage was written. But I think that's his concern, that the process be followed, and not just automatically assume that the council can take that money and use it for whatever purposes are needed. I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Real. But the thing is, the council never approved the bypassed budget, and the administration they bypassed the budget, and council was argue, but there's no 3 votes, so council can't do anything. You don't want the 3 votes. You was one of the 3 votes to support them.
Did you forget?
Can you put for the record that I was what did you say, the 3rd vote?
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Meyer,
okay, I think we don't have any questions.
No, I do.
Question?
I still have questions.
Okay, go ahead then.
Ms. Meyer, I just want to correct Mr. Yanez that Measure H has done a lot of really good things. And Measure H, the things that were good and where the committee did have their intentions and their desires be fulfilled is that we did give $3 million to the pool project the day before of the ribbon cutting. So there's $3 million, and then there's still some pretty hefty money in the bank waiting where we bonded, and we're waiting to build a fire station. As far as I understand, for the last year, we haven't had any information as far as how our fire station is progressing, but 7 million is withheld right there, waiting to be able to build a fire station. That money, when it was being thought to bond out, there was a lot of fighting going on and what we were going to build, if we were going to build a new police station or a new fire station. So it took a little while to decide that, but it's been a while, and it's kind of sad that we're not using it, but at least 3 million was used. You have another good reserve of that money that is going towards parks. And when you talk about what it was sold as, we can't help when people go out and promote a measure. You cannot help your public and stop them from promoting, because that's freedom of speech. But when we sit down here and we look at law, Measure H is general fund purposes. Sorry? General application, it's not restricted. So at the end of the day, we apply law on how it's spent. If there was a confusion, because I lived that and I heard a lot about that, but no one ever actually sat down and tried to clarify that confusion. And like I tell a lot of people, Measure H is not a very old fund. It's only been around about 6 years. So in order to be able to receive a full accounting of what he's looking for, I would believe you'll get there to be able to give us more details, stuff like that. So, you know, it's like she's saying, I think it's really important to try to instill the building back that trust, because we're working with best available information for a while now. And I think that that's what it has been for the whole time that we're transitioning over to Springbrook, is that a lot of what we have been able to produce has been with best available information. And so, for example, what we're looking at right now, the budget, you keep consistently indicating that it is a forecast. And so, do we consider this budget as balanced? Yes, at this given time, because at this given time, this is what we have. This is the best available information. And that's how you set these things up, with best available information. So, you know, previously we didn't have very good systems. That's why we purchased Springbrook, and now we're starting to move forward. So as far as the past and all of that, I'd like to ask a question about the future, because I know that another issue that, like Mr. Real is indicating, we have some top-heavy salaries. We've practiced attrition quite a bit. In the last 6 years, I'll say. The past council took care of a lot of attrition issues, and in the last year, I think we took at least care of three cases of attrition. And will we then, I think if we can explain just to the public what that means, and that how that kind of helps with payroll and budget issues like this. Is that a good practice to consider for this council as far as attrition?
So the proposed budget includes the estimated salary and benefit for the current workforce, right? And so should any employees retire or leave or separate for whatever reason, and those positions are not filled, there would be vacancy savings. Have I addressed your question?
Kind of, I guess it's a natural practice when you're trying to, you know, tighten your budget to look at attrition options. We've done it before, and I'm asking, are we going to continue to look at that as well? I'm looking at ideas to reduce our budget. And so if we're looking at the fact that our payroll is heavy, then will attrition be one of our focus, well, not focuses, but one of the availability as far as options?
Okay.
So what we can do is put that on the list of menu options to explore, to find ways for cost savings.
Okay. And then the other thing that I got a little lost on, honestly, because there's just so much turnover as far as administration and the different things that were happening, is that when I started about 6 years ago, we saw this. I saw this previous to sitting on the dais, and I remember that we were here and there was about a $5 million deficit, Lorena, maybe? And there was three options maybe? And it was very detailed. I remember I sat here in the audience and we saw all the different options. At this time, it feels as we only have like one option. So maybe if we can have kind of sort of what we did that last time, where we can see a variety of options and be able to have the public look at that in a real workshop where we can sit down and people really get into this. Because if we're only providing this information to the unions and to the public right now, we're not giving anybody any time. We are condensing 2 different years together, and I know that there's an issue with timeliness, but this is a lot to consume. And so I'm a little lost on the fact that because when we were back 5 years ago, what ended up happening is that council decided to close every Friday. And so then now, I think we went back to Fridays, and with the skeleton crew, I need to understand what happened there and where we're at, so that if that's another consideration. Okay, I don't, okay. So then now, formally or officially, we are now open on Fridays with the skeleton crew. Okay? So that is also maybe something to consider if we can go ahead and close those Fridays again, as we were before, because I'm not sure how that would save money to do that. But, I mean, there's a lot of decisions that self-inflict bleeding. And so I see that one as another one, that might look at that as well. So what I'm doing right now is looking at the different areas where I feel that there's some wiggle room that we should be doing as a council, and to try to work together to find better solutions that works for everyone. That's all, for now.
Thank you, Ms. Hurtado. Right now, Ms. Hurtado make me remember
I have a comment.
you asking about the police investigation. What I understanding reaching the $1.3 million, and that how much was 14-15, how much was 15-16?
I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
You don't? Can you give us briefly how much for the 14-15, how much for 15-16, and how much is going to be 16-17? So like about 700,000 last year. I mean the 14-15, another 700,000. That's 15-16. So 1.4 million, and we're gonna get more growing. Just for the police department investigation and the lawyers. So that's another cost of the. We don't know how much it's gonna be more if we keep going in this way. Okay, so thank you. If you have any questions, so we're going to be closing the presentation. Ms. Mayor, thank you. I'm very happy to see you here. And I know for you the last of sulfur, and including our financing departments, they do tremendous job for us, and they've been sacrificing themselves a lot. And even today, they come early to finish the presentation tonight. That's why we could have this one today. And I very appreciated working with the staff. Probably, pretty soon I'm not going to be no longer mayor, but I'm very appreciated with our staff in sort of limited access, limited condition. They've been doing a lot of job, and I believe Ms. Mayor is still leading us very correct way. I hopefully this is the first step for us to have the budget, and I continues to have a right budget for the future. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Real, I think you need to have a presentation. Go ahead. No, you already have yours, not mine. So you don't want to show the number.
Presentation, how about some solutions?
What do you want to see?
This meeting ended.
So if you have nothing to show, then
They're your numbers for Calexico. Is that all central? That's all central. Okay, let's do Calexico. Okay. There's Calexico.
Go back.
We got 41,000 residents. This is 2014. They're all open in 2014. So we got 41,000 residents, 177 employees, which is 232 residents per employee. Average wage is 68,320 per employee, and average retirement healthcare cost of 28,000 for a total of close to, $17 million, which is pretty much right on the money with what Ms. Mayor states that we spend on total wages and retirement cost. Mr. Kim wants to show this other graph here, which shows where the money's going, police administration, fire administration, public safety, city manager, finance administration, building, wastewater, water, housing grants, library, and And the number of employees here, we could see in 2009, which was around 270, dwindled to around 170 in 2014. And Mr. Kim was elaborating on the pay per employee, how it's gone up from around 43,000 now up to the $68,000 range. And so you can see the employees' numbers go down while the salaries have increased. Again, we don't know if that's, I don't know if that's due to salaries or benefits or, but the facts are that when you see these numbers, and let me compare. This is the city of Calexico. Let's compare the city of El Centro, which is 44,000 people, close to 45. So about 4,000 people more than our city. They have 349 employees. So about double the employees that we have, and their total wages are about 21 million. So about $4 million more than ours, but double the number of employees. You can see the average wage is significantly less at 44,000 versus 68,000, and 16,000 average retirement cost versus 28,000 per employee in Calexico. City of Imperial is also average wage is around $35,000 and average retirement is $4,000. About 114 employees for 18,000. So with Ms. Mayor's projection of us having 146 employees, we're getting close to that number. We're almost there. That's the city of Imperial. And then Brawley has 26,000 people and they have 264 employees. So that's about 120 more employees than we're supposed to have this year, and they're about a little bit less, more than half of our population. So these are just some numbers to look at as far as comparing the city of Calexico with, and this can be seen at the publicpay.ca.gov, government compensation in California, and this goes information given to the state controller from the cities. I'm going to go real quick to Calexico, and just to show, you can go here and click on notice 177 employees, and if you go back to 2009, we were at 276 employees, and our total wages and retirement was around 16 million. So we're about $1 million short in 2009 from what we're spending now, but about 100 employees more than today. And you can see the average wage was a lot more in line with our neighboring city to the north, which is El Centro, than what it is now.
You know, El Centro doesn't have an airport, do they? And El Centro has a hospital. City of Calexico doesn't have a hospital. City of Calexico's hospital is our first responders. And the other thing that El Centro doesn't have is a border. And our city has to deal with not only border crimes that are very different, that when someone, for example, decides to jump the international border, who pays for that? We do. Where do we get reimbursement? We don't.
I'm actually checking.
So there's also, sorry, real quick, and there's also the footprint that visitors, the grime, the dirt, the trash, the smell, all of that, who's taking care of it? We are. So to compare us all the time to El Centro, we're a different monster.
That's why we need more employees than they do.
Exactly.
Yeah, these figures don't include the hospital, and like I can send you the link so you can do your homework on it as well, because it's.
Well, it's great to
it's
say
not
the information,
including
Mr. Real, but it's time to look for the solution.
What's the solution? Do you have it?
I just gave you guys a bunch of information. Now it's time to make the decisions.
Okay, I think Mr. Rial's presentation is finished.
It's not a presentation. For the
Okay.
record, you asked me to come up here and put this on there.
I didn't ask you to do it. You don't want to, you don't want to volunteer to come down there. Then you want to show your side. So anyways, it's good to know the information where we are, and we, first of all, we have lots of short of our staff, especially our safety officers, and they are suffering. Sometimes they just sleep a couple hours only, and to come back to another shift to cover. Some people might gonna say they're getting overtime, but they're jeopardizing their safety too. And actually, there's another liability possible for the city in case of anything happens to them. So there's another issue we have to looking into the more numbers and the police officers too.
Can we make some closing comments and then adjourn?
Yeah, I think so. We have some. Mr.
Are we
Pierre want to
having a
say
meeting on
something.
Tuesday?
Oh, by the way.
Are we?
By the way, I think Mr. Leal was asking me to, Mr. Finley, you want to talk something about the transition of the insurance? It looks like we trying to be accusing or trying to be overspending because the transforming or the moving the
I think
insurance to the CSAC from the JPIA.
I think what Mr. Kim's trying to say, that Councilwoman Hurtado is hinting that the reason the overspending happened was because of the us losing JPIA.
No,
And
actually, I
my
think it's a
under-
responsibility of us to the community, because you didn't give the fiscal impact before, and I, as a leader and as a decision maker, need to know what the fiscal impact is, so I know when we're deciding these decisions, and it is public information. That is the only reason why.
Can I finish my comment?
And if we're going to continue to point fingers, we're not going to get anywhere.
Now it's time not to point fingers. But, so anyways, as I was saying, Councilwoman is hinting that if the previous administration would have stayed, the administration that spent the more than $4, $5, $6 million, that if we would have kept JPA, none of this would have happened. Everything would have been okay if Mr. Warren and Bostic would have still been here. I believe that's what you're hinting?
Let's just move on to the Thursday meeting. Are we
Okay.
having a meeting on Thursday, Mr. City Manager?
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
what we're prepared to do is to meet with the Finance Subcommittee that you formed tomorrow and present this presentation to get further feedback, and it's our intent to bring back a resolution and a final budget on Thursday. I believe the meeting's at 6:30.
Do we gonna need what's called the closed session?
I think we should just focus on this budget.
Just focus on the budget, and then.
Mr. Finley, before you leave,
6 o'clock, probably.
can I interject something real quick? As far as the Measure H funds that, I know that you and staff, including the fire chief here, had worked a lot on the fire station. There was a comment said that nothing's been done with that, but land acquisition is in progress, and everything with the Triple P was
Oh, there you go,
supposed to be.
Chief saying he doesn't even know.
You haven't talked to the real estate company to,
Sad.
I believe you were there at a meeting with me and Nick with some investors from the Triple P to try and get this going.
Correct.
And so
That was the last conversation we ever had about it. There was at least a dozen emails that were sent to the interim city manager and some council members that never received any response.
Sorry?
The two members that were in the meeting.
Who's
At
Triple
least
P?
Mr. Real was there.
You met
Mr.
with
Kim did
Triple
not
P?
mention.
Is that a PPP?
Yes.
Public-private partnership?
Yeah, so we met to discuss some options for purchasing property and building a fire station based on a amortized rate for a 30-year public-private partnership.
Are you saying that, I'm sorry, are you saying that the initial intention to bond out the Measure H monies is going another route for purchase?
They're
just
I
talking
guess
land
what I'm
acquisition.
saying is that
The 10 million is
the
not enough.
The project is no
Yeah.
longer even moving forward. This will be the fifth city manager that gets to touch this project, at which time we started with $7.5 million. I think Mr. Finance Director Eduardo mentioned that now it's no longer 7.5, but 4 million, and I could be wrong, but that's what he mentioned Friday to me in a meeting with the city manager. So $4 million to build a $12 million facility doesn't take very much to figure out that it's not going to happen. So my proposal to you and this council, which I was going to make probably at a future meeting, was to say, we have whatever the finance director says is left in this budget, which, and Mr. Yanez does have some credibility in saying that this was a project we funded for and didn't ever happen. But we used it as, and I wouldn't call it a slush fund, but I used it as a contingency fund to fill all these gaps that are happening. But there's $4 million left, or it should be. Why not take that $4 million and rebuild our current facility? Tear it down, rebuild it, put us temporary in the courthouse like we're trying to do, and just stay where we're at. That's about all we can afford. The problem is that, and I'm sure the association's going to raise a ruckus about it, that we can no longer function out of that department. One sink, one shower for 10 guys. Horrible. This is horrible, and it's not something that is new to anyone. We've been on this project for what, 7 years now, 6 years now, 5 city managers. I'm speechless.
Okay, Mr. Mercado, they have the trailer, they have separate showers.
Correct, yeah, but they're half a block away. I've been trying to get POs to get signed, and I finally got one today from Mr. Villa to fix the air conditioners. We haven't even transitioned into that other unit because we can't even get POs to fix stuff that's broken. So, I mean, we're going to have living there, but our units are not going to move. So what does that mean to our city? Is that the response times are going to grow even further apart. From 3 to 4 minutes, they're going to go probably from 4 to 7 minutes. It's hard to say. Those are challenges. You talk about having increases in service delays. It's tough. This budget is tough for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, can you verify why we have a $4 million left over for the?
Chief Mercado, if I'm not mistaken, the meeting we had was, what, 2 months ago? Maybe 3?
I wasn't at that meeting.
No,
I
you
couldn't
were
make
invited,
it.
but you just didn't show up, and it was
I
an ad
couldn't
hoc
make it.
committee just to kind of discuss the possibilities,
But
but
then my
ago.
understanding was the $7 million was there.
7.5 was there. We used $40,000 or $50,000 to do a time and travel study and a facility kind of assessment of what our needs were. That's the only money that we'd ever spent. But that 7.5 is, my understanding, is no longer there.
So 3 just disappeared.
$500,000 for the swimming pool, so supposedly like 6.5.
6.5.
Yes. Okay, Chief, City Council. Fire station, $7 million as originally planned. $2 million for the school district pool. 1.8 million for parks and improvements. That's the original plan. After $3 million were wired to the school district, we have 1 million for parks, 7 millions for the fire station.
So we do have 7 billion. Yeah, that was just different than what we heard on Friday.
6 million.
Somebody told you different on Friday?
Mr. Eduardo
6 or
told us
6.5
before.
probably.
But I mean,
Okay,
6 million for the fire station.
6 million for the fire station currently.
Mr. Villa, can we once and for all have like a more easier to understand detail of the Measure H? Like I said, it's only been a fund that's been around for 6 years and it's so questionable. Is there something that we can do? Because, that's not, we need to have better information.
Let me study the situation and bring you back a report on exactly what has.
Yes,
that money
and
has
the other
been
thing I'd like to
spent
know
for.
is the PPP visit that happened here. I'd like as council to understand
Well,
a little more
that-
detail on that report of what occurred there.
That decision would be a policy decision by this council and.
Yes, but
But
no
what I'd
one
like
is
to
aware
do-
here of those talks, and I think it's important to know, if we
Right.
can have a report where those talks were, where they initiated, who they're with, because the PPP financing mechanism is a very interesting mechanism, and we need to know if that's something that really we want to take on here in the city, because the city has already been entertained for a PPP, as you know, mechanism when it came to the port of entry, and we did not go that route. Okay, so, and I understood a lot about what happened that time. So if we're looking at a PPP, I think the council needs to have a little bit of a report on that.
With all due
I'm
respect.
sorry, I didn't even know that was happening.
That's okay. With all due respect to that, we had a gentleman that came in and offered to present the idea. And it wasn't a pitch, it wasn't a way for us to try to figure out how to skin the cat.
Well, then I'm sorry that you were informed that we even had to go that other route when we still have the 7. If there's something like necessary to enhance what you're going to do, then maybe a PPP. But a PPP for the full project, then now we know we don't need to. Because
Chief.
you do have 7.
You have 7, but the fire department you need is 12 or 11.
Regardless, I mean, it doesn't,
You still need funding.
We need to get going.
So I think that we really entertain the thought of improving the site, demolish it, and build up what we can. I mean, that's really our only option. Because if we wait any further, that 6 million now is probably going to go to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then eventually it'll be built after we're all gone. So, but I will gladly forward the information that the gentleman did provide us on that 3P, so you guys can all have a copy of that. I thought that was shared with you, but that was
It was shared during our briefings.
Okay.
And for the council members that attended their briefings, I think we all knew about it. Yeah.
I'll gladly share that again, just in case anyone didn't get it.
Thank you, Mr. Mercado. Okay, by the way, when we decided when you approved the December, when you approved the CSAC to going there, they all cost analysis it was there. So it like it cost us same things paying as the JPI paying. Even we pay for the 6 months to additional the cost. And this year is going to be the cheaper, and next year going to be more cheaper if our city staff doing correctly their job. Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you want to comment?
Are we done?
Okay, looks like his presentation is done. Mr. Biel, anything to relating to city budget? You want to talk?
No, that's about
Okay, thank you. Mr. Real?
Just, again, you know what, as a, if we, as a council, are going to do the necessary adjustments or for the city to be better off in the future, I just got to say, if we're going to go down to 146 employees, I mean, I can't imagine the services that we're going to give our citizens. And you know, our citizens already took a hit with Measure H. When with the people that were pushing Measure H, past Measure H, that was the citizens' way of saying, okay, we'll pitch in with that extra tax money. And I mean, it's just incredible that we're going to be at 140, 150 employees in a city of 40,000 people. Like Councilwoman Hurtado said, you know, we're not El Centro. You know, we need more people than El Centro because we are a border, because we do have an airport. I mean, it was just completely opposite than what we actually need. She's saying that because we have a border and we have an airport, we need less people. I mean, that doesn't make sense. We need more people. And if El Centro has 350 employees and we're going to be running a city with 150, I mean, I just think we're doing a huge disservice to our community. But then again, it's up to the council what they're going to want to do. But I urge us to, whatever decision we make is the best for the community as a whole, the 40,000 and the 140 employees that are going to be left. But we're definitely in important times right now. And if we don't make the right decisions, the only thing we're doing is what the councils in the past did, which is kick the ball to the next people that are going to be up here, because that's what happens.
Mr. Real, Measure H, half-cent sales tax comes from Mexicali shoppers.
Also.
Not only Calexico shoppers.
Correct.
75% of our business is from across the border, so they're the ones footing the bill.
Correct.
In many respects.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Real? You done?
I'm done.
Mr. Castro?
I'm done. Call for adjournment.
Second.
Mr. Castro? No. Okay. Our job is the community for the community. Everybody wants to have their portion to cover, but we try to minimizing the impacting on the city employee. We have to serve the communities right. And past the council, we had the big issues, but unfortunately, it's our hands to make the decision. We don't want to be that position, but we have to take it, whatever comes, to survive the city and serve the communities better. Thank you. Do we have a judge on the meeting?
Adjourn.
Done.
9:07, we adjourn the meeting.